Welcome back to the deep dive. Getting ready for today's show, I have to admit, I had a bit of a moment.
Oh, yeah.
I was sitting there staring at my screen, just this mountain of PDFs,
Yeah.
and I had this almost physical urge. You just click a button and have an AI summarize it all for me.
It's muscle memory now, isn't it?
It totally is. It's
Yeah.
2026. This technology is just,
Yeah.
it's the water we swim in.
Yeah.
You open a browser, it wants to write your emails. You open a doc, it wants to draft your outline. I swear my fridge is about to start offering to write poetry about the milk expiring.
It really has become ubiquitous. I mean, in a way that I don't think anyone, even just 3 or 4 years ago, could have fully predicted. It's gone from being this, this novelty, this toy, to being something like the operating system of our daily lives.
Right. It is everywhere. But here's the thing that stopped me, and it's really the heart of what we're diving into today.
Yeah.
I hesitated.
Ah.
I looked at that generate summary button and I thought, wait, am I allowed to do this? Is this okay? And I'm a grown adult doing a podcast. Imagine if I were a sophomore in college.
Or a junior in high school.
Yeah. The tech is omnipresent, but the rules. The actual guardrails for how we're supposed to live with this stuff, they feel incredibly sparse. It really feels like the Wild West out there.
Sparse is a very diplomatic way of putting it. I'd argue it's more like we've built this incredibly high-speed supersonic plane while we are actively flying it at 30,000 feet.
Okay, I like this analogy.
And all the passengers, the students, the teachers, the administrators, they're all just looking at each other asking, does anyone actually know how to land this thing?
That perfectly captures the anxiety I was seeing in the research you sent over. I want to start with a number that honestly, it shocked me. I had to read it twice. It's from a UNESCO survey.
It's a big one.
You would think, right, given that ChatGPT and all its cousins have been mainstream since, late 2022? You'd think by now, 2026, schools would have this locked down.
You would think.
But the survey found that less than 10%, single digits, of schools and universities had any formal guidance on generative AI.
It is a staggering statistic.
Less than 10%. How is that even possible?
It is shocking, but when you peel back the layers a little bit, it's actually not that surprising.
How so?
Just think about the speed of the updates. We went from GPT-3 to 4 to 5 to whatever iteration we're on now in what felt like the blink of an eye. Bureaucracy moves at the speed of,
No bureaucracy.
Exactly. By the time a university committee even drafts a policy for one version of the technology has already fundamentally changed. So you're left with this vacuum. 90% of institutions are effectively operating in silence.
But that vacuum creates so much tension. It's not like people are happy with the silence. I was looking at the breakdown of who actually wants the rules. And it isn't the administrators pushing for it. And it's the families. You've got data here showing 81% of parents and 72% of students are desperate for guidance. They're basically waving their hands screaming, please just tell us the rules. Tell us how to use this without getting expelled.
And that is the absolute tragedy of this current moment. You have this massive disconnect. On one side, you have students who are digital natives. They see this tool as a fundamental utility, like a calculator or, a spell checker.
Sure.
On the other side, you have institutions that are largely paralyzed by fear. And for a long, long time, that fear manifested as a single obsessive question.
Is it cheating?
Exactly. Is it cheating? For years, that was the only conversation happening in faculty lounges. Schools panicked. They saw AI as this existential threat to academic integrity. So the knee-jerk reaction wasn't to understand it or regulate it.
It was to ban it.
It was to ban it or just pretend it didn't exist.
Which is pretty hard to do when it's embedded in your word processor.
It's impossible, actually. And that's why our mission on this deep dive is to push past that binary. We are not going to spend the next hour debating, is it cheating? Because frankly, that's a boring question.
The answer is always, it depends.
It always depends. The real question, the one we need to answer to survive in 2026 is, how do we actually live with this? How do we navigate a world where the machine can do the work for us?
I love that framing. We have to get pragmatic. So I want to lay out the roadmap for everyone listening because we have a massive stack of sources today. We're going to talk about why that ban it strategy and all the tools used to enforce it have largely failed.
A spectacular failure in some cases.
And we're going to get into this really cool concept called the pragmatist approach to ethics, which I have to say, it completely changed how I view this issue.
That's a game changer. It really shifts the focus from policing to skill building.
And then we're going to look at the stuff happening behind the curtain, the invisible AI that decides who gets in college in the first place.
The stuff nobody sees.
Right. But I want to start with the chaos on the ground. You mentioned that schools panicked and tried to ban it, but clearly students are using it anyway. What does that reality actually look like right now?
It's a reality of confusion and a lot of hidden behavior. We have this fascinating survey from KPMG Canada that really paints the picture. They polled people aged 18 and up, so we're talking university age and adults.
Okay.
They found that 52% of Canadians are using generative AI for their schoolwork.
Over half.
Over half. And they're not just using it to write funny poems. I mean, they're using it to generate ideas, to do the heavy lifting of research, and yes, to draft essays. It is fully integrated into their workflow.
Okay, so half the class is using it. But here is where the cognitive dissonance kicks in for me. That same survey said 60% of students think using it constitutes cheating.
Right.
So do the math with me here. You've got this huge overlap of people who are using it but also think they're doing something wrong. That sounds like a recipe for incredible anxiety.
It creates a massive psychological burden. Just imagine going to work every day and using a tool that you secretly believe might get you fired. But you use it because everyone else is using it and it makes you faster. And then add this layer on top. 60% of students also say they don't actually know their school's policy.
Because the school falls into that 90% that hasn't written one yet?
Precisely. So the student is operating in the shadows. They're just guessing. Is this allowed? Maybe. I guess I won't tell my professor just in case. It completely erodes the trust between the learner and the teacher. Instead of mentorship, it becomes a game of cat and mouse.
And the cat in this scenario usually comes in the form of those detection tools. I remember a couple of years ago when this all started, companies like Turnitin and GPT-0 came out swinging.
Oh, they're everywhere.
They were marketing themselves as the saviors of education. Yep. Don't worry, we can catch the bots. It was a full-on arms race.
It was absolutely an arms race. And for a hot minute, schools thought, okay, problem solved, we'll just run everything through the scanner. But there was a major, major glitch in that strategy.
They didn't work.
Well, it's a bit more nuanced than they didn't work. They worked in a way that was actually dangerous. See, detecting plagiarism from another human is relatively straightforward.
Right.
You compare a student's essay against a database of millions of other essays. If you find a matching sentence, boom, gotcha. That's just string matching.
You copied off Wikipedia, we have the receipt. Easy.
Exactly. But detecting AI is totally different. And AI doesn't copy text. It generates it fresh every single time based on probability. So these detection tools, they aren't looking for matches. They're looking for statistical patterns. They're looking for things like perplexity and burstiness.
Perplexity and burstiness. Okay, those sound like, I don't know, dance moves or something. Break those down for us.
So perplexity is basically a measure of how surprised the model is by the text. If a human writes a sentence, it might be weird or creative or grammatically complex. That's high perplexity.
Yeah.
And AI, by its very nature, is designed to choose the most probable next word. So AI writing tends to have very low perplexity. It's smooth, it's predictable.
Okay, and burstiness.
Burstiness is the variation in sentence structure. Humans are bursty. We'll write a long, complex sentence with a bunch of clauses, and then we follow it up with a short one, like this.
Very direct.
Yeah. AI tends to be very monotonous. Its sentences have a very consistent rhythm, a consistent length.
So the detectors are basically just looking for boring, predictable writing.
In a nutshell, yes. But here's the problem. A lot of humans write in a boring, predictable way.
Especially students.
Especially students who are trying to sound formal or academic. They use all the right transition words, they avoid slang, they structure their paragraphs rigidly. To a detector, a well-structured, slightly stiff student essay looks exactly like ChatGPT.
Which leads to the dreaded false positive.
The false positive. And the rate of these false positives was, and still is, unacceptably high. We're not talking about 1 in a million. Depending on the tool and the settings, it could be significant.
And the consequence is just awful.
Mm.
You're accusing an innocent student of academic dishonesty.
Think about the power dynamic there. The machine spits out a report, 98% AI probability. The professor looks at the screen and says, well, the computer says you cheated.
And the student says, I didn't. But how do you prove a negative? How do you possibly prove you didn't use a bot?
You can't. Not really. I mean, you can show your version history in your document, maybe, but the burden of proof shifts entirely onto the student. It becomes a guilty until proven innocent model.
That's horrible.
And the stress that causes, I mean, we have reports of students having full-blown panic attacks, students dropping classes, students who are terrified to turn in work they actually wrote because they're afraid their writing style is too robotic.
That is heartbreaking. It's like we've weaponized
Yeah.
the entire assessment process.
And that's why the consensus in the source material, especially the stance from UNESCO and the researchers like Severin, Laflamme, and Bruneau, is that repression is a dead end. You cannot ban your way out of this. You cannot police your way out of this with software.
So if the sheriff approach fails, if we can't just go around arresting all the cheaters, what's the alternative?
Yeah.
UNESCO had a pretty interesting take on this.
UNESCO argues that we need to stop treating the symptom and start treating the disease. If an AI can easily pass your test or write your essay, the problem isn't the AI, the problem is the test.
Ouch. Shots fired at the professors.
Well, it's a valid critique. If the assignment is summarize the main themes of Hamlet, a bot can do that in 3 seconds and probably do it pretty well. Why are we asking humans to function like bad databases?
That's a great point.
So UNESCO suggests we need to move to prevention by rethinking our assessment designs. We need to create tasks where AI can't do it better than a human.
Like what? What is AI actually bad at?
It's bad at talking about current events sometimes. It's bad at genuine personal reflection. It's really bad at explaining the process of learning.
So you don't just grade the final essay.
Exactly. You grade the outline, the draft, and then you have an oral defense. You sit the student down and say, hey, tell me why you chose this argument over that one. Walk me through your thinking.
You mean actually talk to the students? What a radical concept.
I know, right? It requires more time, more resources, of course, but it's the only way to ensure that learning is actually happening. We have to move from a culture of policing to a culture of integrity.
This brings us to the philosophical meat of the episode. Because if we aren't just going to ban it, we have to teach students how to use it ethically. And I feel like ethics is a word that makes a lot of people's eyes glaze over.
For sure.
They picture a dusty old philosophy professor or like a boring code of conduct PDF that you just scroll through without reading so you can click, I agree.
That's the traditional view. We call that the deontological approach. It's rule-based ethics. Do X, don't do Y. The problem is, in the age of AI, the rules change every single week. A rule that says don't use text generation becomes obsolete the moment Microsoft Word adds text generation to the spell checker.
Right, so you can't just hand them a rule book. It'll be out of date by Tuesday.
No, you can't. The source from the Journal of Scholarly Publishing proposes something much more dynamic. They call it the pragmatist approach. It's based on the work of John Dewey, an American philosopher who believed that education and ethics are all about experience.
Okay, broke that down for me. How is this different from a rule book?
Dewey would say that ethics isn't a list of commandments you memorize, it's a competence, it's a skill. Like playing the piano or, to use a better analogy, learning how to drive.
Okay.
You can read the driver's manual cover to cover. You can memorize the shape of every single road sign. But until you are actually behind the wheel on a highway in the pouring rain with a truck cutting you off, you do not know how to drive.
Because driving is all about split-second judgment.
Yep.
It's about navigating a messy, unpredictable reality.
Exactly. And navigating AI is the same. It is messy. You can't just have a blanket rule that says AI is bad. You have to be in the situation to understand the trade-offs. The authors break this competence down into a triangle. 3 things you need to be able to do.
I love a good triangle. What's the first point?
The first point is ethical sensitivity. This is the gut check. It's simply the ability to recognize that you're in a moral situation in the first place. It's that moment when you're sitting at your computer, it's late at night, the deadline is approaching, and you have ChatGPT open. And you hesitate. You feel that little rupture, that imbalance.
It's noticing the friction, not just blindly plowing ahead.
Right. If you don't even realize there is a dilemma, you can't be ethical. You're just sleepwalking. So that's the first step. The second point is reflexive skills.
Reflexive skills. Okay.
This is the internal monologue. Once you've realized you have a problem, how do you go about solving it? What resources do you mobilize inside your own head? You start asking yourself questions like, okay, if I use this to write my intro, am I actually learning how to write an intro? What happens if I get caught? Is this fair to the other students in the class?
So sensitivity is noticing the problem. Reflexivity is thinking about the problem. What's the third?
The third is dialogical skills. This is the one we miss the most. Interaction. You cannot do ethics alone in a dark room. You have to verify your thoughts with other people.
This goes right back to what we said earlier about the silence. Students are afraid to talk.
Yes. Developing dialogical skills means having the courage and the opportunity to go to the professor and say, Professor, I'm really stuck on the structure for this paper. I was thinking of using Claude or ChatGPT to help me brainstorm some outlines. Is that okay for this assignment?
It's about creating a shared meaning.
A shared understanding. If you and the professor agree on the boundaries, the ethical tension just disappears. It becomes a collaboration.
But to have that conversation, to be able to ask that question intelligently, the student really needs to understand what they're actually asking to use. The research mentions that you need technical competence to be ethical. You need to know how the machine works.
This is absolutely non-negotiable. You cannot make an ethical decision about a tool if you think the tool is magic. And right now, a lot of people think AI is magic.
They really do.
We need to demystify it. The authors use this fantastic term, stochastic parrots.
Stochastic parrots. It sounds like a great band name, but it's actually a really crucial concept for understanding how these large language models work.
It is. A parrot, as we know, mimics sounds without understanding what they mean. Stochastic just means randomly determined or probabilistic. These models don't know facts. They don't know history. They are simply predicting the next most likely word in a sequence based on the massive amount of text they were trained on.
So when I ask it, who was the first president of the United States? It's not looking up a fact in a database somewhere. It's just asking itself, when people say first president of the United States, what words usually come next?
That's it. And usually the words George Washington come next, so it gets it right. But that very same mechanism is why we get hallucinations. If you ask it about a legal case that doesn't exist, it might just invent one because the pattern of the words sounds like a court case should sound.
And if a student doesn't understand that, if they think the AI is some kind of oracle of truth, they fall into a huge ethical trap. They might submit totally fabricated information without even realizing it.
Correct. And they also fall victim to something called the ELIZA effect. This is named after a chatbot from the 1960s, if you can believe it.
The 60s, wow.
Yeah. Even back then, people would talk to this very, very simple program, and they would project human emotions onto it. They'd say, ELIZA understands me. ELIZA cares about my problems.
We're just wired to find humanity in things.
Yeah.
Like I said, I thank my toaster.
We all do it. But with modern AI, it can be dangerous. We use words like the AI thinks or the AI suggests. We attribute authority to it. If a student thinks the AI is an objective, intelligent authority figure, they might let it override their own judgment. They might accept a biased output because, well, the computer said so.
And speaking of bias, that was another one of the huge fields of competence in the socio-technical context.
Yeah.
Understanding that these tools are not neutral.
Not at all. They're mirrors. They reflect the data they were trained on. If the internet is sexist, and spoiler alert, the internet is sexist, then the model will pick up those patterns and reproduce them.
Sure.
But there's another layer of unfairness here that the pragmatist approach forces us to look at, the digital divide.
This one makes me so angry. It's the pay-to-win aspect of education that's emerging.
It is becoming a very serious equity issue. If you can afford $20 a month for the premium version of ChatGPT or Claude, you are getting access to a model that is significantly smarter, more nuanced, and less prone to making errors than the free version.
So the wealthy student gets a world-class tutor on their laptop, and the student on a tight budget gets the stochastic parrot that hallucinates legal precedents.
Precisely. If we're going to be ethical about this, we have to acknowledge that inequity. A teacher can't just say, everyone use AI for this project, without asking the follow-up question. Who has access to the good AI?
Okay, so we've established that banning is out, and we need to treat ethics as a skill teaching students about the parrot, the bias, the digital divide. But I'm imagining a teacher listening to this. They are nodding along, but they're also thinking, okay, that's great philosophy, but I have a class at 8 a.m. tomorrow. What do I actually put in the syllabus?
They need a playbook, a tactical guide.
And fortunately, the World Economic Forum and some other institutions have stepped up with exactly that. I want to look at the traffic light system because it is so simple and so effective.
This comes from the WEF's principles on integrity, and it's brilliant because it removes all the ambiguity. We talked about how students are confused. This fixes that. The idea is that for every single assignment, the teacher explicitly assigns a color.
Okay, break down the colors for us.
So red light, this means stop. No AI allowed, period. This is for when the learning objective requires unassisted human cognition. Think. In-class exams, oral presentations, or maybe a deep personal narrative. The goal here is to verify that you know the material.
Okay, simple enough. What's yellow light?
Yellow light is proceed with caution. This is the nuanced one. You can use AI, but with specific constraints. Maybe you can use it to brainstorm ideas or to critique your argument or to find sources for your bibliography.
But not to write the paper itself.
Right. The actual drafting, the writing of the sentences must be yours. And you have to disclose it. You have to say, I use ChatGPT to generate 5 potential topic ideas.
And green light?
Green light is go. Full automation allowed. Maybe the assignment is to produce a business marketing plan. And in the real world, you would absolutely use AI for that. So the teacher says, use the tools, go for it, just make sure the final product is good and you're the one in charge.
I love this because it teaches that dialogical skill we talked about earlier. It forces the conversation. The student doesn't have to guess. They just look at the syllabus. Oh, this is a yellow light paper. Done.
It builds trust. It says to the student, I know this technology exists. I'm not an idiot, and I am telling you exactly how you can use it for this specific task. It treats the student like an adult professional in training.
There was another analogy in the playbook that I thought was perfect for the agency piece of this, the GPS analogy.
Yes, this comes from the Peninsula School District. We all use GPS, right? It's a tool. It tells us the fastest route. It warns us about traffic ahead. But, and this is the absolute key, the GPS does not drive the car.
Right. If the GPS says, turn right, and you look out your window and see a lake, you don't turn right.
Exactly. You, the human, are the driver. You have the agency. The AI is your co-pilot. It can suggest a sentence, it can suggest a structure, but you have to decide if it's any good. You have to verify it. If the AI hallucinates a fact, if it tries to drive you into the lake, and you leave that in your paper, that is your fault as the driver. You cannot blame the GPS.
That puts the responsibility back on the student in a really empowering way. It's not about restriction. It's about control. You are in charge. The machine works for you.
And that links directly to the framework from California State University Fullerton. They have this great mnemonic, ethical. It's a checklist for implementation.
Let's run through it quickly. E is for exploration.
Let students play with the tools in a low-stakes environment. A sandbox. Let them break it. Let them see the hallucinations for themselves so they understand the limitations.
T is transparency.
Cite your sources. If you used AI, say so. Simple.
H is human-centered.
The tech should augment us, not replace us. We should always focus on what makes us human: creativity, critical thinking, empathy.
Then you have I for integrity, C for continuous learning, which is huge, and then A for accessibility. We touched on this with the digital divide.
Right, we have to make sure we aren't leaving disabled users behind. AI can actually be a huge boon for accessibility. I mean, text-to-speech, summarizing dense text for neurodivergent learners, but we have to be intentional and make sure the tools are designed for everyone.
And finally, L for legal. Don't break the law, kids. Copyright is a real thing.
And privacy laws. Please, do not upload your friend's personal data into a public chatbot. That is a major legal no-no.
So we have a classroom strategy. Traffic lights, GPS, the ethical framework. If we stopped here, I think listeners would feel pretty good about how to handle their next essay.
Yeah.
But we need to zoom out, because while we're all worrying about whether a student used ChatGPT to write their homework, the universities themselves are using AI to decide who even gets to be a student.
This is the side of the story that so often gets buried. We focus on the front end, what happens in the classroom. But the back end, admissions, financial aid, enrollment management, is being completely overhauled by AI.
I think most people have this, this romantic idea of admissions. A group of tweed-jacketed professors sitting around a mahogany table, reading essays, thoughtfully debating the merits of young Timmy.
That is a lovely image. It is also completely fictional for most large institutions today. To understand why, you just have to look at the sheer volume. A place like UCLA or NYU might receive over 100,000 applications in a single cycle.
100,000.
There is physically not enough time in the universe for a human being to read every single word of every single one of those applications with deep focus. It's fundamentally a data processing problem. So naturally, they turn to tools. We were looking at a source from Liaison and OTHOT, which provides these AI services to universities.
And they use this term that I found a little bit chilling, prescriptive analytics. It's not just predicting what's going to happen, it's prescribing what to do about it.
Right. So predictive analytics says, based on these 10 data points, student A is likely to drop out. Prescriptive analytics says student A is likely to drop out, so you should send them this specific email about mental health resources right now to change that outcome.
And in admissions, it helps them build the class. It can predict this student from Florida is unlikely to enroll unless we offer them exactly X amount of scholarship money.
Exactly. It helps the university optimize their yield, their budget. It's efficient. It helps them manage massive resources. But it introduces a huge black box problem.
The black box. This is the fear that we don't know why the machine made the decision it did.
If you get rejected from your dream school, you want to know why. Was it my essay? Was it my GPA? But if an algorithm just flagged you as a low probability of success candidate and a human admissions officer just rubber stamped that decision, do we really know why?
And this gets right back into the bias issue. The source material talks about AI being a less biased pair of eyes, which is an interesting claim.
It's the argument they make. The idea is that humans are tired, they're grumpy, they have implicit biases. A human admissions officer might subconsciously dislike people from a certain state, or they might be hungry right before lunch and grade an application more harshly. A machine is consistent, it doesn't get hangry.
But the machine learns from history.
And history is biased. If a university has historically rejected students from a certain zip code, maybe a poorer zip code or a predominantly minority one, the AI just notices that pattern. It says, oh, successful students usually don't come from the zip code. So it starts downgrading applicants from that area. It just reinforces the bias of the past, but now with a veneer of objectivity.
And this is all happening in a legal minefield. We had the Supreme Court decision prohibiting the use of race in admissions.
That adds a huge layer of complexity. Universities want diversity. They know it's educationally valuable, but they can't explicitly look at race. So they might hope that AI can find these holistic candidates who bring diversity without explicitly using the race variable.
But that's a dangerous game.
It is, because if the AI uses proxies like zip code or the name of your high school or the vocabulary you use in your essay to essentially guess the race of an applicant, that could be illegal.
It's a tightrope walk.
A very thin one. That's why bias mitigation is such a huge industry now. You have to constantly audit the algorithms. You can't just set it and forget it. You have to be checking. Is our bot rejecting women at a higher rate? Is it favoring private school kids?
And transparency is key again. If I'm a student applying to college, I feel like I should know if a robot is the one reading my application.
Absolutely. The black box cannot be the standard for determining people's futures.
So we've looked at the chaos, the philosophy, the classroom tactics, and the scary administrative backend. But there is one voice we haven't really heard from yet in all this. The students.
Right.
We talk about them a lot, but what do they actually think?
This was my favorite part of the research stack, I have to say. We have this study from the International Journal of Educational Technology in Higher Education, and they went deep. They didn't just ask, do you like AI? They used something called a triadic ontological framework to map out student perceptions across the whole life cycle of a course.
And they found that students aren't just one thing. They aren't just pro-AI or anti-AI. Their feelings change dramatically depending on what the AI is actually doing. They broke it down into 5 stages. I want to walk through these because it's a fascinating journey into the student mind.
Let's do it.
Okay, stage 1, system design. This is before the class even starts. How is the course itself built?
Here, students were overwhelmingly concerned with human centricity. They are worried that if an AI designs the curriculum, it'll be cold, it'll lack empathy. They want to know that a human being thought about their workload, their mental health, their learning journey. They don't want to be taught by a robot.
Stage 2, data stewardship. This is the privacy one, the big brother fear.
The panopticon.
Explain that concept for us.
Yeah. So the panopticon is an architectural concept for a prison designed so a single guard in a central tower can see all the inmates, but the inmates can't see the guard. So they have to behave as if they are being watched at all times.
And that is how students feel about educational data.
Especially when it comes to continuous surveillance. The study found that students are actually pretty pragmatic. They'll give you their data if it helps them learn better, but they draw a very hard line at invasive monitoring. Eye tracking, facial analytics.
The eye tracking thing really creeps me out. The idea that if I look out the window to think for 10 seconds, the software flags me as suspicious?
Students hate that. It creates a physical anxiety. They feel like they have to perform being a good student for the camera rather than just relaxing and actually thinking.
Okay, stage 3, construction. This is about making the test itself.
Here, the big fear is profiling. Will the AI write questions that are unfair to me? Students are very aware of cultural bias. They worry the AI will use examples or language that they aren't familiar with, disadvantaging them based on their background. They demand inclusivity here, more than anything.
Stage 4, administration. the act of taking the test.
This is where the fear of false accusations really comes in. We talked about this earlier with detection. Students are terrified of AI proctoring. They told the researchers, it's vague. They just don't understand the rules of the machine. If they fidget, if they read the question aloud to themselves to process it, will they get flagged?
They want to be honest, but they're scared the machine will misinterpret their very human body language.
Exactly. And finally, stage 5, grading, the moment of truth.
This sounds like the big one.
This is the biggest friction point. Privacy is huge here. They don't want their personal essays fed into some public database to train the next model. But the big one is trust. The study found a really interesting distinction. Students trust the institution more than they trust the tech.
What does that mean exactly?
It means they generally trust the university to have their back, but they think the software itself is glitchy or biased or just plain random.
Which makes sense. We've all had software crash on us in the middle of something important.
We have, and they value auditability. They said, if an AI is going to grade me, I want a human to be able to check the math. I want an appeals process. I want a second opinion.
There was a funny point in there, though. Students admitted they kind of like that AI doesn't get tired.
Yes, they did. They said, the AI doesn't get hangry. It doesn't get impatient. It offers instant feedback, which is great. So they see the value, but they worry it misses the spark.
The nuance.
It misses the sarcasm, the humor, the cultural context of a really unique or creative argument.
So the big takeaway from the student perspective is, don't just make one blanket AI policy. You need to address these very different fears at different stages of the process. You need privacy protections at the grading stage, and you need human empathy at the design stage.
Exactly. It's not a monolith. It's a relationship that evolves over the course of a semester.
So we've covered a lot of ground today. We've gone from the Wild West of 2026 to the philosophy of John Dewey, the practical traffic lights, and the deep anxieties of the student body. If we zoom all the way out, what is the big picture here? The World Economic Forum calls this the transition to the intelligent age.
We are leaving the information age. The information age was all about accessing knowledge. Google gave us the world's library at our fingertips. The intelligent age is about generating knowledge. It's about having a partner that can think, or at least simulate thinking alongside us.
And to survive in that age, we need those 3 pillars we've been circling this whole time.
Literacy. We have to understand the tool, not just how to code, but how it thinks. We have to understand the stochastic parrot.
Agency. We have to stay in the driver's seat. The GPS doesn't drive the car. We do.
And transparency. We have to show our work. Whether you're a student writing a paper or a dean building a freshman class, no more black boxes.
I want to leave the listeners with one final thought. It's something that has been gnawing at me during this whole conversation. We've talked a lot about how to manage AI, how to cite it, how to detect it, how to regulate it. But there's a deeper question here about learning itself.
Go on.
If I use AI to brainstorm my thesis, and then I use AI to outline my arguments, and then I use AI to smooth out my prose, and then the professor uses AI to grade it, are we just creating a closed loop where machines are talking to machines and we humans are just spectators?
That is the existential risk, isn't it?
It feels like the real value of education isn't the final essay. The essay is just a PDF. The value is the struggle of writing the essay, the confusion, the staring at the blank page, the painful process of organizing messy thoughts in your head. That struggle is the learning.
You are absolutely right. Writing is thinking. If we outsource the writing, we are outsourcing the thinking. And if we do that, we aren't just cheating on a test. We're cheating ourselves out of the very cognitive growth that education is supposed to provide.
So the challenge isn't just don't get caught. The challenge is protect the struggle. Choose to do the hard thing sometimes, because the hard thing is what makes you smarter.
A beautiful sentiment to end on.
So for everyone listening, here's your homework. Try the traffic light method this week. Even if you aren't in school, look at your to-do list at work. Ask yourself, is this a green light task where I can automate it and be efficient? Or is this a red light task, a difficult email, a creative problem, a strategy document, where I need to struggle through it myself to really, truly understand it?
Be the driver, not the passenger.
Exactly. Thanks for diving in with us. Good luck out there in the intelligent age. We'll see you next time.